Alright, hey everybody, this is another test of the little SJ4000 video cam with the external mic mod that I did to it. I'll have a description, I guess, later on in the link about it. Pretty simple mod, just followed a teardown, SJ400 teardown that I saw on Google, and I think that was on the RC groups. And he showed how to take the camera apart in pretty good detail, and I was able to use that as a basis on finding out where the condenser mic was in the original camera. And essentially what I did is basically what we used to do with the old GoPros without the external mic input, was to desolder the original microphone off the circuit board and just wire in a external mic jack, and that's really all there was to it. This microphone that I have in here now is just a little inexpensive lapel microphone, and it doesn't have any wind guard or anything on it. It's actually tucked into my cheek pad on the left side of my cheek pad, and the foam padding of the helmet does a pretty good job at muffling the wind. But I'm on my bigger bike now. This is a the last video was on a little Chinese scooter that I have, but this bike is a 2009 Hyosung GV650, or however you want to call it, Hyosung GV650. It's a South Korean bike. It's 650 cc's, and it's a V-twin, supposedly a little over 70-something horsepower. It's got pretty good pick up and go, and I've had pretty good luck with this bike. It's been a really good bike. It was fairly inexpensive. The quality is pretty good. It's not perfect, but anyway, we'll take her for a ride around this national park here. This is actually Jefferson Barracks National Cemetery over to my right here. And the park that I'm in now is actually called Sylvian Springs Park, but we'll be riding into Jefferson Barracks Park. They're kind of all connected. And we'll take a spin around the park, and we'll see how everything comes out. All right, here we go. I've had some problems here lately with this left hand control here with the blinker not resetting. The controls aren't really the greatest of all quality, so you'll see me routinely through the video just keep pressing that thing. Mostly it was out of force of habit from when I first started riding. I kept forgetting to turn the blinkers off, and now that I've got these newer bikes with the cancellation feature on it, it's kind of helped me out a little bit. So this park is located in St. Louis County. It's actually, I guess, Lime. So there's the still active Jefferson Barracks. And they've kind of made some of these older buildings into, like you see here, the Civil War Museum. I've been in that. It's really nice. And they're rehabbing this building here. I'm not exactly sure what the exact dates of some of these buildings are, but you can Google the Jefferson Barracks Park, and you can get a lot of information on that. I think it was kind of a leaping point for the some of the troops in the Civil War. I don't want to talk too much about it because I'll probably jack it all up. I'm more worried about not getting hit by deer. 1, 2, 3 deer, 4, 5. Let's take it a little slow. Still scared them. So this is a really nice old park. I've lived in St. Louis County all my life. I grew up here. They're building a big water park over there. I actually just found that out. Comes from not paying enough attention to what's going on in your community. But we recently had a son, and I've been kind of more focused on doing that stuff than riding around. But the park's been around for a long time. I grew up here. Pretty much hasn't changed too terribly much. I mean, they added this big, huge walking path around the park, and it pretty much goes around the entire inside of the park. They've got all sorts of little pavilions and stuff around. Got some disc golf courses or frisbee courses up here, and I've had to watch out for a flinging frisbee at me a few times. So we'll go out at this other exit of the park, and here is one of the old Century Guard, I guess, houses in the middle of the road here for it. And then of course the rest of the buildings. Some cannons there. There's another Century house there. So we'll go back into the park here. Hopefully I'm not sniffling and snorting too terribly much. My sinuses have been really killing me lately. But they've done some upgrades to the park. They've added this pretty long walking trail, and it's really nice. They do Civil War reenactments here, and World War II reenactments here that I really enjoy coming down to watch. And they've got a amphitheater. Helmet smashing my cheeks and it's not letting me say it. They've got a big amphitheater up here with pavilions and whatnot, and they've had some concerts up here. They have a few little museums in and around the park. Some of them are free and some of them are privately owned. This one is a free museum up here. I think this is the old... I better just read the sign. So the Powder Magazine Museum. It's a nice little museum inside, and there's another one just right across over there that's basically sort of the same deal. But it's a huge park, and every time I seem to be riding in it, it's like nobody here. But I have came down when there's concerts or the Civil War Museum, or I'm sorry, the Civil War reenactments or the World War II reenactments, and man, it is packed. I mean, you can't even find a spot to park. People are parking on the street and half in the grass. We'll just cruise on through the rest of the park. Oh, I should have went down there. I've taken some pictures of this bike right when I first got it, down there at the old stables that they restored. And there's also an old, I think it was a tender's house. And we'll get some video of that next time, I guess. We'll just cruise through the park. I'm worried about it raining on me here. Kind of out here, oh, another deer. Kind of out here with no wet gear on. Just got my Kevlar pants on, shirt. I go with that blinker again. Seems like it wants to cancel sometimes, and the rest of the time there's it's like a catch there. And I don't know if it's just the way that I'm hitting it or what the deal is, but sometimes it doesn't cancel. Like right there. You really gotta force it. Probably just something I can get in there and file down, but I'm not really worried about it. So anyway, yeah, this as far as the bike goes, I know that there's probably going to be people interested in the bike, maybe. Like I said, it's a 2009 Hyosung GV650. At the time, this was their only cruiser. They have a ST7, or the GV650 Classic, I think is what it's known as in the rest of the world. They have these two big cruiser bikes now, and this is about the size of a V-Rod, maybe a little smaller, but it's kind of proportionate, the same. Everybody calls it a V-Rod knockoff. This bike's lighter and has damn near the same acceleration times as the stock V-Rod, or I guess the original one. This is supposedly supposed to be a legitimate 12-second bike. I know it's a lot quicker than the 2008 Triumph Bonneville T100 that I had, and I had a set of pipes on it and a jet kit and some other stuff on it. It was the last of the carbureted bikes here in the United States, and it was pretty quick for what it was, but this bike would eat it up. The T100 was a beautiful bike and would have been way more of a better investment later on down the road. Actually, it was a great investment. I ended up losing only $600 from what I bought that bike new whenever I sold it, but I have a partially torn ACL in this left knee, and I've been kind of dragging it on for like the last 7 or 8 years. And I tore that ACL right after I purchased that Triumph Bonneville new in October of 2007. And damn, lost my train train of thought. But anyway, I purchased that bike new and ended up hurting my leg, and decided that I probably just better go ahead and mothball that bike. So I put it in storage in the basement, drained all the gas and overfilled the oil, and it sat for about 2 years after only putting about 700 miles on it. And it got to the point where I was doing some leg exercises and whatnot, and I decided that I was going to go ahead and get it out of storage and start riding it around again. I had bought some scooters and stuff, and I had been riding those, and they had these forward seating position on our foot position, and I had been riding those to keep me from being rusty. I bought a 1986 Honda Helix and then a 2011 SSR Rowdy. It's a Chinese knockoff of the Honda Big Ruckus 250, and it's just a little 150cc. I had it in my first video whenever I first got this SJ4000 going, so you can see it in that. And I'll have more videos with that because I tend to ride that bike more than I do this bike. I have Ducati Diavel exhaust that I modified onto this bike, and it's a touch too loud to be leaving at 4:30 in the morning whenever I go to work. So I tend to ride the scooter or drive the cage going into work. But for the most part, I ride the that scooter almost full time. I drove that daily for 2 or 3 years. 2 years. I'm sorry, 2 years. I drove that daily for a few years, then got the Bonneville out of mothballs and out of storage. This is a construction entrance here. I probably should have not come this way, but this is where that big construction project, the water park's going in here, the Lime water park that I was ever so schooled on the You Grew Up in Oakville forum on Facebook. So I took the Bonneville out of storage and started riding it around, but it has this the pegs are ever so slightly behind you, and they really bothered me. It really bothered that leg. Just started irritating it again. Just something with having this leg back, like that. And it wasn't like sport bike, it wasn't like you're all crouched down into a sport bike position. But it was just enough that it aggravated that left knee, so kind of did some soul searching in that Bonneville. I wanted one of those ever since they came out with the new Triumph Bonneville, the Hinckley Bonneville in the early 2000s. I wanted one of those for the longest time. So I got it. I was able to ride it, and I only put like 2,000 miles on it, and unfortunately I had to get rid of it just because it hurt my knee so bad. So I had been looking at these bikes. I had seen a gentleman in Estes, Colorado, and I guess it was 2006, and he was he owned a dealership that was it was a Harley Davidson dealership, and they were gonna, I guess they were testing some of these to bring him into their showroom, and I think he sold several other brands too. He was out kind of in the middle of nowhere, so he kind of had to sell a little bit of everything. But So he had two of these, and I seen one of these in Estes Park, and it was the first time that I ever saw it, and I really liked it. And I stopped and talked to the guy, and he was an older gentleman, and he was riding one of those kind of like on a test ride, and he had already put about 7,000 miles on it. He took a few weeks off and had just been driving across the country with it. And this was at the time when these bikes were unheard of. I mean, they're kind of popular now, but you know, not so much as like a Japanese brand. But so anyway, this was, you know, pretty wasn't really popular, so there wasn't, you know, a lot of parts and stuff around for them, and you know, dealerships were few and far between, and you know, it's pretty gutsy on this guy to take one of these things out and ride it cross country. And they handle the highway pretty good. Like I said, they're 650 V-twin with a lot of power, and it's a high revving V-twin like you've seen in some of my takeoffs. I've kind of got on it a little bit. But they run really good. He did tell me, you know, he ended up having some problems with the stator and the voltage regulator rectifier, I guess is what it is. And you know, that he had to replace them at a friend's dealership in the middle of nowhere on the bike. And you know, they basically replaced it with used parts off another bike. And now this is pretty common. Hyosung still puts pretty bad electronics, at least in the stator and the regulator rectifier. Supposedly the regulator rectifier was the bad part of the whole system, and I realized that once one of those goes, it usually takes the other one. But we're just making a big circle here. But anyway, you know, what's really popular right now is what he did, you know, years ago to this bike. You know, he put a Ninja 250 stator into it, and he put a MOFSET regulator into it and wired it up. And, you know, that's something that they should have addressed years ago. The bikes are pretty nice, but there's guys that are still having problems with them. But that's pretty much, you know, mainly the only issue. But, you know, when I had my Triumph, I was reading about the same things, you know, with the Triumphs, you know, different, like the street triples, you know, burning through voltage regulators, you know, and there's big write-ups on their forum about it. But, so it isn't anything new with bikes. You know, if you're a bike rider, you know that, you know, the electrical system on bikes, you know, they're pretty taxed. But you can have issues with anything, I guess, but more so with these. You kind of know when you get one of these bikes that, you know, you might have to do this upgrade. And this bike has a EX250 stator in it, and it also has a 2013 Yamaha R1 MOFSET regulator in it. And I didn't do anything, I didn't reinvent the wheel here, you know, I just followed what everybody else did and wired it in, and it's been really nice. Just makes the whole bike run a lot better when you got good clean voltage running to it. It also helps that you don't get stranded on the side of the road with a garbage voltage regulator or a stator that this one guy commented on, that on the KO Riders forum, that it looked like it was wound by a whole bunch of drunken toddlers by hand. And my original one pretty much looked just like that. Everything else on the bike looks fantastic, but you know, they're getting these cheap parts to put in the electrical system on it. But enough about that. I mean, other than those, you know, two little issues, I had an oil leak on the primary cover, I guess the clutch cover, and that happened about a week after I bought the bike. And I bought the bike new. It's a 2009, but I bought it in 2013. And I think the story was with this dealer, Hyosung of America put me in touch with them, and the dealer, I guess, had bought a whole bunch of old stock from a Honda dealership that used to sell these things at one time, and he had a handful of these things left over. And this color combo wasn't my first choice. They only had a handful of colors in 2009, which is actually a lot better than most bike manufacturers. I mean, most of the time you just get one color. They just change that color every year. But the paints on it is pretty nice. It's a lot better than the earlier ones, I can tell you that. It's pretty light. It's got a lot of chrome-plated plastic on it, just like every other new bike besides a Harley. But it's a pretty good runner. I have absolutely no issues with this bike with my knee whatsoever. I put some of these, you can look down here, and I put some of these Hyosung floorboards on it. And other than they could stand to be tilted back a little bit, rotated back towards me a little bit, I don't have any problems with them. I've got fairly short legs. I'm only 5'8" on a good day. So the floorboards really helped out. And the seat's a little bit more comfortable than my Bonneville. My Bonneville was just like sitting on an ironing board, but this one actually isn't too terribly bad until you get going on to about 2 or 3 hours of riding. But anyways, that's the park. So I just figured I'd ramble on a little bit about the park and the bikes. So hopefully this will give you some insight on what the SJ4000 camera can do with a internal mic or external mic. And like I said, I just have this plumbed into my helmet, and this is just a cheap HJC helmet. So I have it plumbed into my cheek pad, my left cheek pad, and the helmet, or the camcorder, as you can see, is just mounted to the side of my helmet here. And I'll tell you what, I've had some reservations about putting this camera off the side of my helmet, but I know this is kind of where you get the best kind of first-person view, or, you know, next to the closest thing of being on a motorcycle view. And some guys mount them on the tank, but, you know, a lot of bikes vibrate and whatnot. But I'll tell you one thing, when people see this camera hanging off the side of your head, and my wife and I were just discussing that, they turn into completely different people around our neighborhood, and I'm sure many Oakvillians that are watching this video can attest to this. You know, you're allowed to park in the street, or on the side of the streets on some of the streets. Obviously not like this one because it's a painted line street, but if it's just like a concrete street, you can park on the side of the street, and nobody gives two cares about coming over into your lane, you know, to get around a car, and it's like they don't even care. Oh, maybe I shouldn't have it in whatever there. You know, it's like they don't even care. They'll just run you over. But I mean, I have seen people duck in behind cars when they see that I have this camera on my head, and it's hilarious. And of course, you know, everybody wants to wave at you because they know, you know, they're going to be on YouTube or whatever, and that's fine. But it's nice to, you know, some of the things I like about riding around is, you know, when I was real young, I wasn't allowed to have motorcycles until, you know, I got older and came home with the mini bike, you know, when I was about 11 years old or so. But when I was real young, you know, motorcycles were kind of forbidden in my house, and I'm 38 right now, And you see these kids, you know, in their backyard and waving at you and stuff and running along the fence line, you know, just seeing that you're on a bike, you know, and you're able to capture some of that, you know, stuff on the video. That's pretty cool. I always thought that was pretty neat. So anyhow, we're just gonna head on back to the house. This park's only about I guess 3 miles away from my house, 4 miles away from my house. It's really nice. And of course the big Jefferson Barracks National Cemetery is over there. I'm sure you can read all about that if you want to. Oh, some crap on the ground over here. Hopefully this exhaust that I put on here isn't just totally drowning everything out. I really like it on this bike though. We're real limited to what we can get to put on these bikes, especially here in the States. The motorcycles are more popular overseas, and there's more I guess accessories for it. But you know, you kind of, it's either, you know, you pay a real high price, you know, to get parts shipped over here from overseas, or, you know, you try to make something fit. So I had started out with a twin pipe setup that I had made for myself on this bike, and I used some Harley-Davidson Dynaglide Reinhardt aftermarket slip-ons, and they sounded pretty good, but they hung a little too low. And this bike, if I pull over here and let you look at it, you know, you can see that it's kind of a sport bike styled cruiser, so you can really lean over on this thing. And I noticed that I kept hitting the pipes and scraping them up, and those things are really expensive. I think I paid like $300 just for the slip-ons alone. So I took them off and put the stock, you know, cannon back on. It's this big, huge, massive, heavy thing. And I tore the rear baffle out of it, you know, just to give it some sort of noise so it wouldn't sound like a sewing machine. And then I came across a Ducati Diavel in a parking lot. I stopped at an auto parts store on the way home from work one night, and I seen this factory exhaust on this bike, and I'm like, man, that thing looks really nice. And I just took a picture of it, and I'm not really techie savvy. I know enough to get by, so I had my wife Photoshop it onto my actual bike, a picture of my actual bike, and tried to make the proportions the right size and everything. And I decided that I liked it, so I started looking online to see. Looked online to see how much these things would cost, and I started seeing some on eBay, but they were going for upwards of 200 plus, close to $300. You know, I think that Ducati's near a, you know, $17,000 to $20,000 bike, if I'm not mistaken. And people can correct me if I'm wrong on that. I don't really care, but you know, the parts are pretty expensive for it. So I kept doing some searching on eBay after a couple weeks, and I had something set up on eBay to, you know, alert me if something new showed up there. And this guy had posted one of these exhausts brand new with like 5 miles on it for like $75. Buy it now, and $25 shipped. So I jumped on it, and I had to do a little hacking to get it to fit. I'm a machinist by trade, so I made a flange to keep the factory Hyosung header. Really anything wrong with it, and I wanted to keep those lines of the bike. So, kind of get an idea of the wind noise right there. You know, if I was to go on the highway with this and keep up with the traffic, I'll just do it right now, you can hear, you know, what the wind noise would be like. I don't really ride this too much on the highway anyway. I just don't. I don't really have a need to. But anyway, back to the exhaust. I made a flange. I machined a flange on a lathe that I have, and put the correct bolt circle into it, and I cut the angled pipe on the Ducati stock muffler system and just adapted it to fit the bike. And those bikes had a pretty throaty sound, and they're I guess an L twin. You know, it's still a V-style twin bike like this is. The specs on this bike are real close to the early SV650. It's not the same motor. Everybody keeps saying that. It's not. It's Hyosung's own motor. It's just very similar to the original SV650 motor. So you can get an idea what exhausts are going to sound like on these bikes by just looking at SV650 motors, and whatever exhaust you like, try to throw it on your bike. This road's really bouncy here. It's got flooded out a few times and buckled right there, and they just keep shaving the buckled concrete off and throwing down blacktop over it. And then the blacktop buckles. So you can really lean this bike over. I mean, I don't go crazy with it, but you know, for a cruiser bike, you can really get it over in the corners. I'm sure a much better rider could do it. But I mean, I scraped my floorboards so far on it. But I threw the Ducati exhaust onto it and made my own 3/8 inch thick, 3/8 inch by 1 inch aluminum bracket to go off the original muffler stand on the bike. We can pull over here in this little, the Elks Lodge entrance, and I can get off the bike and give you an idea what the bike looks like. I know this video's kind of ran long. Some of these videos are pretty boring to people, but some of the guys like them. So we'll pull over here real quick since there's never really a lot of people here. We'll keep it running here. Now I'll open up the face mask or the shield, and we can get an idea what it sounds like. So this is the left side of the bike. I pretty much just kept it stock. I mean, it still has some of the stock warning stickers on it that are in like Korenglish. But I took the stock stickers off the tank, and I had the top of the tank wet sanded and buffed just because it had some orange peel. It still has some, but it was really bad when I got it. But that was no big deal. It cost me about $105 to get that done. And this is the right side of the bike with the Ducati Diavel exhaust onto it. And the bikes come pretty well set up from the factory. I mean, you see the upside down forks and the twin discs in the front. It really needs to have braided brake hoses in the front and the rear. But this has I put EBC pads on it just because I knew on the forums getting into it that, you know, the brake pads were kind of shoddy. But it has Bridgestone Battle Axe tires on it from the factory, and I don't have any problems with them. It's either a love and hate relationship with them. With some guys, they were better than the Metzler or whatever tires that were on my Triumph, that's for sure. These feel a lot more sure-footed, and it probably helps that the bike's longer and lower too. So you can get an idea what the bike looks like there and what the exhaust sounds like. If I rev it up, it'll probably sound like crap, but so this is the first year for the fuel injection, so it kind of has the goofy Mikuni, kind of an afterthought fuel injection on it. I have done the TPS adjustment on it, but it's a good running bike. I was really hoping that I would be happy with it after getting rid of the Bonneville, and I have been. You know, it has some, you know, quality issues here and there, but my Bonneville did as well. You know, there were some quality issues as far as the fasteners on my Bonneville, and everybody says that those are pretty much as close to a Honda as you can get, you know, in terms of quality nowadays. The new Triumphs are. But I've been pretty happy with this thing. Really not much else to say about it. They changed the name on it. It's called the Aquila Pro now. It used to be this Avatar, but it's a pretty nice bike. So we'll just go ahead and get back on it and get home. I can see over there it's starting to get dark, and it's the date and time, if it's on this camera, is absolutely wrong. I just haven't messed with it. But it's a little bit before noon, and it's starting to look like it's going to rain. We'll just turn around here and head on back to my house. This area that I'm going through right here, just for you know, notation for anybody in Oakville, this is the Oakville Elks Lodge here. That's been here, you know, since I was a kid, longer. And this area that's all overgrown here to the right, and you can see some headstone or some tombstones over there. Hopefully I caught them in the video there. This area that's in front of me used to be Robert Koch Hospital, and if anybody wants to do any searching and learning on that, you can check it out on the internet. But it was a big tuberculosis hospital, and I'll make note here, this woods that's all overgrown here has thousands of old tombstones in it. And this hospital was a tuberculosis hospital, and I think it came online late 1800s, early 1900s, and you know, tuberculosis was pretty bad. If you look right there, you can see the old sign that used to be there for, or I'm sorry, the sign base that was the for the old hospital. But the hospital was a tuberculosis hospital, and I think it was like a 6 or 7 building complex, and I could be wrong. When I was a kid, it was all still standing. And like I said, I grew up around here, and it was all still standing. We used to go down there all the time and sneak into it and get in trouble and get our parents all pissed off at us and stuff, until they started putting a big security fence up around it, and then putting a security guard in there. But it was a big tuberculosis hospital, and all those gravestones, tombstones that are in there were of the patients that died there. And that ground that I showed you that's overgrown is just owned by the county, and they don't do anything with it, I guess. But the tombstones that are on that Oakville Elks property there, that they, you know, keep those trimmed and neat. But the ones cleaned up, the ones in the woods. Whoop, missed a gear. More worried about the guy on the right. The ones in the woods aren't, you know, were probably kept up, you know, up until about the 60s or 70s or so, and then they, you know, everything just went to hell. It didn't go to hell. I mean, you know, antibiotics, you know, started coming online, and there was just no need, you know, for that hospital anymore. You know, tuberculosis wasn't as much as an epidemic as it was back in the day. So I think that was an infirmary for a while, and then you know, they closed it down in the late 80s, I think, or mid 80s, and it had been basically running on a, you know, limited crew anyway, before I was even born, I think. But so anyway, that's just something pretty interesting about that little area that I stopped there to take pictures of. Or not take pictures of, but show you the sides of the bike, profile of the bike. But it's looking like it's getting ready to rain. I think I just felt something on my hand, so I think we're gonna end it there. I'll talk to you guys later.